What's up everybody, welcome back to another video. 0 Mile EDV, a true beginner's guide to adventure motorcycling. So when I talk about my terrible riding or my accidents, my lack of confidence, yes, it's because I'm not very good at riding motorcycles. I'm still learning, but still leave your terrible comments below. Troll away. We don't get a lot of terrible comments, and the internet can be a dark place, but most of you people are really, really nice and I appreciate that. When we first started, we got some terrible comments and we've only gotten a few that are kind of trollish. So leave those terrible comments below. Tell me why you hate these videos. Tell me why you think my glasses are ugly, why you don't like my hat, why you don't like my Sweet Bloom sweatshirt even though they make amazing coffee. All the terrible comments, leave those below. So with that, let's get into this. This video actually came from one of the members of 0 Mile EDV community. He said, hey, having ridden both the BMW 1250 GS and the Ducati, could you compare them and let me know what you would buy today? So today, I thought it would be a good video and fun one to do. I've only compared two other bikes. Now, important caveat, I'm going to be talking about this from things as learning coming from a newer rider and things I learned and got used to, or what I would have liked better or what I wouldn't have liked better. If you want in-depth, all the bells and whistles, the features, how does it ride, all the stuff, go check out Big Rock Moto's channel. He does super in-depth videos on motorcycles he demos, reviews, and so his videos are going to be far better than mine when it comes to all the technical details of each motorcycle. This is kind of a high overview comparing the two from a beginner's perspective. So with that, let's start with number one, the easiest thing to talk about, and I think it's appearance. For me, I'm very vain. I like things to look good. I like them to be stylish. I like all that stuff. Maybe it's why I like my Harley in a lot of regards, because it's fun to build it and paint it and do all that stuff. So when it comes to looks, this one's super easy. I have to give it to the Ducati Multistrada Rally, V4 Rally I should say. That bike just looked amazing, and it still had the beak. I'm not a big beak fan off the front over the front tire. I think the GS is starting to grow on me, but I still think it is an ugly bike. Having now spent some time earlier this late fall, early winter on the GS, it grew on me quite a bit, being more in with it, more in person, and having lunch and looking out in the parking lot. I was it's a pretty cool bike actually. It is starting to grow on me, but I think the 1300 looks so much better. I think the body panels are better. They trimmed it up, they cleaned it up. It's just better lines all around. And that's probably why so many people that are in love with the looks of the 1250 hated the 1300, because it's so much cleaner and it's just not so ugly in my opinion. It's still growing on me, but I got to give it to the Ducati all the way. However, if we talk about one other bike, the 1290 Super Adventure S, I hated that grasshopper front end at first. Once I started building the bike and got the crash bars and better tires, it just looked so mean. And now today, that grasshopper front end is probably still my favorite looking of the big adventure bikes. I think it looks amazing. I think the 12, I actually really, really want to see one of these new 1390s that are going to come out, the R or the Rally. That thing looks awesome. But anyways, this isn't about the KTM. This is about the Ducati. So number one has to go to Ducati all day, every day. Number two, let's talk about the engine. I think there's the engine around town and on the highway, which are kind of the same, because you probably have, maybe if you're going to go do things around town or go run errands on your bike, you're going to then get on the highway, and you're probably going to do on the streets, or you're probably going to do a mixture of roads. So kind of road power and then off-road power. And which one would I give it to? Let's start with things I like about the Ducati. Around town, it has this cool, because it's a V4, so it will actually shut off the front cylinders when it's hot, so you don't get so much heat. So it does a really good job of kind of trying to displace some of that heat. It also has these cool little vent things on the side, you can turn on and off to help move the heat better off the bike. I really like that. I think that's a slick idea. It's really cool around town. Not sure if it's possible, if you just turn on the Boxster, because the engine sticks out like this. If you turned off one, all of a sudden you just be bouncing to the side and to the right. So probably not possible there. But with the V4, super easy to turn off. The power of the V4 Rally getting onto the highway and getting up to speed. So for me, coming from my town, if I'm going to drive to the biggest town where the gym and all that stuff was, the highway, the speed limits here are 75, which means most people are going 80, 85. And so when you come around underneath the bridge and you got to get on the highway, you get to actually use some of the full power. So a quick caveat, if you're new, you should probably never use anything close to the full power of these bikes because they're like 175 horsepower. Actually, I think the BMW is like 130 or something. I'll correct myself here what the horsepower is, but the Ducati was something ridiculous, like 170 horsepower. You're never going to use all of that power if you're new because A, you're going to be riding way above your ability, which is super dangerous and you should never do. B, you're probably going to be going way too fast because that bike will get up to speed really quick, so you'll never need to use the full power. And B, you should always ride within the rules of the road, take a motorcycle safety class, get your endorsement, all of that stuff. If you wreck, it is not my fault that you drove like an idiot. So, quick disclaimer there. Anyways, with that, the power. But the way that the power is just delivered on that Ducati, it is just so smooth and it's just so fun. I mean, it feels kind of like a taller sport bike. Like it just rips and it's just so fun. And like the way the bike handles on the road is just amazing. So like coming from the gym, I used to love to get on the highway at this other part because it's kind of like this long on-ramp and it's got this like big sweeping curve. So you can go from like 20 miles an hour and just get up to 75, 80 getting on the highway like around that corner, and it was just so much fun. And so that was amazing. So I would say getting on the highway and like using the power, or like if you need to get around a semi on the highway, the power of the Ducati is pretty amazing and it's incredible. So for that, I will give it to the Ducati because I've talked all the things I talked about. However, there are some caveats. I think the power around town when you're doing slower maneuvers, the BMW can just tractor. And so it can run at a really low RPM and it is very, very linear. So it's not like it really ramps up. Some bikes, you know, they're actually like, I rode the Indian FTR, and that bike, it was like once you got it over like 2,000 RPMs, it was just like, bah, and it would just rip on you. It just like wanted to rip you off in an insane amount of power. Where the BMW is just super linear. So it's like, it's really, really comfortable. It is really easy to know what you're gonna get. Like there's no surprises. There's no just immediate ramp where you just get into the power band, which is amazing. And it runs really, really great at low RPM. Ducati, not so much at low RPM. So around parking lots, like going to the gym, or I love to take my bike because I had panniers, I, you know, like could put stuff in the bags or whatever. So like running around town and doing errands or whatever, going to lunch, whatever you're gonna do, the slower stuff, BMW all the way. That Boxster motor is amazing and it is close, like when you go to get on the highway, but it just doesn't have the exhilaration. It's just like not the same feeling as Ducati when you wanna give it some speed. So maybe now I'm making a correction because you should never use all the power. There's probably no reason to ever use full power on either of these bikes because it'll just like, you're going to be breaking a lot of laws. So I probably actually, now thinking about it, would give it the power around town to the BMW. Now, let's talk about the power off-road. So the power off-road, again, because of what I just mentioned, 100% goes to the BMW. You can tractor that bike anywhere. For me, when I'm off-road, I like to tractor. One thing that I don't like about my Honda CRF 450 RL is it's like you got to be up in the power band with that thing. It just doesn't want to tractor, or it's like really, it just like the motor struggles. And I just like the tractor, like just being able to like give it a little bit of power, not washing out, especially through technical stuff. And the BMW does that amazing. BMW has it nailed. So when you are off-road, if you're going in anything like maybe a Jeep road or like a 50-inch track on that BMW, it is going to be way better than the Ducati. One other thing that I think is super important when we talk about motors is like how the bike is balanced when you're doing slow speed maneuvers. So with Ducati, it carries its weight up high, much like probably the Tiger 1200 does. They both bikes do a good job of being pretty well balanced, so it doesn't feel super top heavy. But you can, when you ride the BMW, you can really feel the difference. Or if you ride the KTM 1290 Super Adventure, either the R or the S, because it moves all the fuel low, that bike has a similar feeling to the BMW. Not quite as much, but pretty dang close. And so when you move that weight, like with the motor being so low and out and kind of pushing it aside, the balance of the bike going slow is just incredible. Now, I will say one thing that I noticed off-road with the BMW is when you are like, you know, like super, super slow, about to put your foot down slow, that weight leaning over the side can pull you and the bike can get heavy real quick. Where the Ducati, when you're kind of coming to almost a stall, you know, because the motor's parallel, it does kind of have more of a flywheel feel. So it doesn't feel so quick to fall over. Now, I never really did any more like technical riding. I just did a lot of dirt roads and fire roads on the Ducati. So I would say when it comes to motor balance though, as long as you're not in those super, super slow situations where the bike gets really heavy and you have some momentum, the BMW, again, all day, every day, that Boxster with it just sticking out the sides. And I never even got to, I mean, I ride in the desert a lot, so I'm not like really in the forest. And I don't think I would take either of these bikes where I'd be worried about like width clearance, even up on some like 50-inch tracks that I like to ride my dirt bike on. There I could even, if it wasn't so rocky and technical and smooth dirt, I would ride this bike because there's 50 inches. You don't have to worry about width. So I'm not taking the bike anywhere where I have to worry about the width of the motor sticking out. So motor, give me to the BMW. It is special. They really have nailed it. Now I know why so many people love it. I have to give it to the BMW. Okay, let's talk about off-road ability. Now I do have to say it's been a while since I've ridden the Ducati, and I've gotten more experience. So was a large learning curve between riding the BMW and riding the Ducati, and so I didn't really take the Ducati in anywhere technical. There wasn't like a lot of rocks or anything like that. In the BMW, I took in some more technical sections than I took the Ducati. So with that caveat in mind, let's talk about the off-road ability. I will say when I sold the KTM and then I went and picked up the Ducati, the first thing I did is I took the Ducati to this one dirt road that I like to practice on because there's no traffic back there. It's very, very quiet, but it had a lot of washboards. And so I was trying to get used to the bike just feeling loose. And I noticed right away with like the Skyhook suspension on the Ducati at higher speeds, and higher speeds we're talking like 30 miles an hour, over like these washboard sections on these backcountry dirt roads, the Ducati felt way better. It felt way more stable. On the KTM, I felt it like want to wash out a lot. So I was initially really impressed with the Ducati and how it felt. And I never really felt like the Ducati was incapable of anything, like anything gnarly. Now, would I take the Ducati on section 2 of the Colorado BDR? I don't know that I would, to be honest with you. I think the BMW, I would. And mostly because let's talk about, like, when it comes to the tail lever suspension, there are a couple of things that is amazing and you don't realize until you ride it. So when you're on the road and you hit the brakes, there's no fork dive. The bike stays level, which is nice. Now for me, that's not a huge deal. You get used to fork dive. I'm used to fork dive on my mountain bike. Like, you're just used to the dive. On the BMW, there's none of that. Now when you get it off road, there's no feedback in the front wheel really from the BMW. I think there's some goods and negatives to this. Good is that when you're first starting, all that feedback and that wash, you're like, oh, I'm gonna lose the bike. But really the bike wants to stay up. So as long as you keep momentum, it's not gonna go anywhere, with some caveats, right? You hit a huge pothole or major sand wash, it could wash the bike out. There are things that will take the bike over. But generally speaking, most places you're gonna be riding these bikes, you'll get that feedback. And for me, it felt like I was gonna lose the bike, but I never did, but it was like a mental thing I had to get over. I noticed right away on the BMW, I ran it through some like thicker shale sections where there's like a lot of loose rock and stuff, and I wanted to feel like, how does this thing feel when it gets loose? And so my mind was preparing me for that. And as soon as I went in, it was kind of just like, you don't really notice anything. So I think the good of that is if you're a new rider and you're riding on dirt roads and you're trying to get better, the bike is gonna feel way more stable. And so like that mental fear of riding on the dirt because you're feeling the bike slide all over the place, which the KTM 1290 Super Adventure S did a lot of, I think it gets rid of that fear and it might help you get more comfortable. But the problem is if you sell the bike and buy something else and then all of a sudden you're all over the place, is there a steep learning curve? I don't know. You know, I'm taking from my own experience because now I'm going from a position where I'm used to that feeling. And so when I don't have it, it's really nice. So if you never had that and all of a sudden felt it, would you feel super uncomfortable on your other bike? Like say you bought a Tiger or the Ducati and then you get on the road and you feel that front end shake and then, you know, like, is it just working its way through the gravel? I don't know. But that suspension, just the way it feels off-road, I think it just does amazing things. And I think that's probably part of the reason why like I would take it on section 2 of the BDR, because all that stuff that was like scary, so you're like imminent cliff death to one side and you're trying to like get through some loose stuff. If there's no loose stuff, you're like, okay, cool, I'm just going to keep my speed. The bike is just trucking, you're bouncing a little bit up and down, and you can kind of hug your side. You're not worried about washing out, dumping the bike, etc. So again, I think off-road, I got to give it to the BMW again. It is just amazing. Now on-road suspension handling, or suspension on-road, I got to give it to the Ducati. Like, that thing just feels like a sport bike. It just handles so well. It is amazing. I would love to ride the Ducati V4 RS, which they just came out with. It's kind of like a more souped up, like kind of like comfortable sport bike than even the Pikes Peak edition, which I think would be amazing. It would be super fun to ride. But on the road, I mean, like on the road, I got to give it to Ducati. It is super comfortable. It handles so well, even being so tall. It was amazing. Now let's talk about, I think one last thing. This video is getting a little bit long, but I think one last thing that I think is pretty important, especially if you're new and you're buying a bike, like you want to ride it and you want to use it. So which bike for me was better around town? I got to give it to the BMW again. So for everybody, it's like the BMW for me is kind of winning out. If I had to go back and get rid of the KTM, I probably would have gotten a BMW. Now, why didn't I get the BMW? Honestly, because everybody has one. And I'm always like, I want to do something different. Like, everybody has a GS. Even though it was a GS that actually got me into this whole thing. I've talked about that story. Seeing those GSs at that coffee shop, I was like, that looks awesome. I want one of these. So yeah, it's like full circle. Like, but I was like, I don't want one because everybody has a GS. But looking back on it, I should have gotten the GS. I might even still have the GS today if I didn't sell it, because I sold the Ducati to get a small bike for the Colorado BDR. So around town though, the BMW, the regular GS, not the GSA or the GS with the sport suspension. One thing that I hate about BMW, there's like a million option packages you can get that really changes how the bike feels, what's on it, etc. So as long as you don't have the sport suspension, which is the taller suspension, that's what I rode. The Rally is tall. Like, it is a tall bike. It is very comfortable when you're moving, but around town it is very tall. So for me, I'm 5'9", is a lot of like sliding off the seat to put my foot down and then like giving some gas and getting on, you know, like a lot of this all day. Where the BMW, I could just kind of like put my foot down. Not flat, but again, I'm doing like kind of the balls of my feet, but I can put one foot down, no problem. Which just makes it easier to get around. And also with like the weight distribution and how that motor is balanced, like when you're in a parking lot going kind of slow and trying to find a parking space or watching out for pedestrians or whatever, the BMW is just way better. Now, I will say that the cases, the aluminum cases that come with the Rally, those things are awesome for all day use. Like, they look good, they're already mounted, they've got this like vibration shake thing in them, look really good. I don't really love the BMW cases, so like from that perspective, the cases that come with the Rally are awesome. But if I had to pick a bike just to ride around and cruise around town and do errands on, I probably would take the BMW again, just with like the no fork dive, all that stuff. It's just a little more comfortable around town. So with that, if you couldn't guess, if I was going to buy one bike, in conclusion, which one would I buy if I was new back then, when I was like, had like about a year under my belt? Which bike would I buy? The answer is neither. I threw a loop for you in there, right? Ooh, you didn't see that coming. Mostly because I would get the 1300. I think the slimmed down look of the bike of the 1300, having sat on one, I would, and they're about the same cost. Like, I think the GSA is all you can get. So unless you're going to buy a used GS, so if I was going to buy a used GS, but the 1300 looks better. You get the new motor, a little bit more power, the new bells and whistles, all of that stuff. I would go 1300 over the Ducati, I think, at this point. But if I was going to buy a used bike, I would buy the 1250, I think, over the GS, over the Ducati, just because I do like spending more time off-road. I think it's better. The engine's better off-road. It's better around town. It's still enough power to get you up on the highway and have fun. It still corners really well. Not as well as the Ducati. The Ducati is better, but in that regard, but I would go GS all day. So if you've stuck around this long, hit the subscribe button. It really helps the channel. tell a friend. Go check out zeromileadv.com. We are trying to produce really cool motorcycle apparel, so you should check that out. If you're watching this before like the April-ish time frame when we're hoping to have everything out, no, there's nothing there yet. We're in pre-production phase, so like we're getting our pre-production samples to sign off on full-on manufacturing. So we should have everything coming out around the April time frame. So if you're watching after that, go check out our products, give us your feedback, be a part of the community, and with that, stay safe out there.